You are sitting on your couch when the email arrives. The subject line says you are pre-approved. You open it, and there is a number staring back at you. $450,000.
Your chest does something strange. Pride, relief, a little bit of disbelief. The bank looked at your income, your debt, your credit score, and decided you are trustworthy enough to borrow nearly $500,000.
And in that exact moment, without anyone saying a single word to you, your brain quietly converts that number into a budget.
This is the moment the trap begins. Not when you sign the closing documents, not when you move in. Right here, in the seconds after you read an approval number, and your brain decides that number is what you should spend. Here is the truth nobody explains to you before you start house hunting. It is not even remotely connected to what will make you financially free.
It is the maximum amount the bank calculates it can lend you while keeping their own risk acceptably low.
That number was built for the bank's balance sheet, not yours.
My name is Nick, and I spend an unreasonable amount of time thinking about money, psychology, and the decisions that quietly determine whether someone builds wealth or spends 30 years treading water.
If you are currently house hunting, recently bought, or feel pressure to buy because everyone keeps telling you renting is throwing money away, subscribe and stick around. Because this video could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Before we go further, ask yourself this. What do you think a mortgage lender is actually optimizing for when they approve you? Most people assume the bank is calculating what is good for them.
The bank is calculating one thing only: the maximum loan they can issue while keeping their default risk low enough to stay profitable. That is it. Your long-term wealth, your ability to invest, your retirement timeline, none of that exists in their calculation. This is why the approval number always feels generous. Lenders typically allow your total housing costs to reach 28% of your gross income, and your total debt, including the mortgage, to reach 36%. These are called the 28-36 rules. They sound conservative. They are not. They are calculated on gross income before tax, and they assume you have no other financial goals competing for that remaining money. Here is the hidden cost stack almost nobody calculates before signing. Your mortgage principal and interest is just the headline number. Add property tax, add homeowner's insurance, add private mortgage insurance if your down payment was under 20%. Add HOA fees if applicable. Add a maintenance reserve, which financial planners recommend at 1 to 2% of home value annually. On a $450,000 home, that maintenance reserve alone is $4,500 to $9,000 a year that almost nobody budgets for until something breaks. Now here is the mechanism that actually creates the trap. It is not any single cost. It is the opportunity cost of the difference between the house you need and the house you were approved for. Let's say you could comfortably live in a $350,000 home, but you buy at $450,000 because you were approved for it and it felt achievable. That $100,000 difference, financed at a typical mortgage rate, adds approximately $600 to your monthly payment. $600 a month invested at 8% average return becomes approximately $880,000 over 30 years. Read that again. The difference between the house you needed and the house you were approved for is not just a bigger mortgage. It is an $880,000 hole in your future net worth, created by a single decision made in the excitement of a pre-approval email. This is what financial planners call house poor, and it has a very specific feeling. It is having a beautiful home and an empty calendar of options. It is saying no to vacations, not because you cannot technically afford them, but because the mortgage already consumes the margin that would have funded them.
It is watching your friends invest aggressively while your money disappears into a structure that, on paper, is an asset, but in practice, behaves like a 30-year subscription you cannot cancel.
Let's run the actual math on two buyers. Both earn $90,000 a year. Buyer 1 gets approved for $450,000 and buys at that level, with a monthly payment around $3,200 once taxes, insurance, and PMI are included. Buyer 2 gets the same approval but buys a $320,000 home with a monthly payment around $2,300. That $900 monthly difference, invested at 8% over 30 years, becomes approximately $1.3 million.
Same income, same approval, same starting point. One decision creates a $1.3 million gap 30 years later.
The 2836 rule is not wrong exactly. It is just incomplete. It tells you the maximum you can survive paying without defaulting. It says nothing about what you can pay while still investing, still traveling, still building an emergency fund, still living a life that is not entirely organized around one asset.
Following the rule to its limit is how financially responsible people end up house poor without ever making an irresponsible decision.
So here is the reframe. Before you ever look at what the bank will approve you for, calculate your own number first. Take your take-home income. Subtract what you need to invest to hit your retirement goals. Subtract your emergency fund contributions. Subtract what you actually want to spend living your life. What remains is your real housing budget, not the bank's. Compare that number to the bank's approval. In almost every case, your number will be lower. Often, significantly lower. The bank's approval number is not a target. It is a ceiling you should usually stay well underneath, not a number you should grow into. Treat it the way you would treat a maximum speed limit on a dangerous road. Knowing the limit exists does not mean driving at it is wise. If you are currently shopping for a home, do this calculation before you fall in love with a property. If you already own a home and recognize yourself in this video, the path forward is not panic. It is adjusting your investing rate to compensate, refinancing if rates allow, or in some cases, recognizing that downsizing later is a legitimate wealth-building move rather than a failure. 30 years from now, your house will be one asset among several. Or it will be the only asset you have, surrounded by 30 years of payments that could have built something larger and more flexible alongside it. That outcome is decided far earlier than closing day. It is decided in the moment you read an approval number and let it become your budget instead of doing the math yourself. The gap between your number and the bank's number is the actual difference between renting more options for life and renting yourself a ceiling for 30 years. Real estate agents will often tell you that you can afford more than you think. This advice is not malicious, but their incentive is a percentage of the sale price, not your 30-year outcome. A higher sale price means a higher commission, even if it means a higher risk for you. This does not mean agents are dishonest. It means their math and your math are simply different equations. Family pressure adds another layer to this. Someone tells you renting is throwing money away. But renting at the right price while investing the difference is mathematically identical to building equity slowly, sometimes faster. The real comparison is never renting versus buying. It is what you do with the monthly difference between the two options. If renting is genuinely cheaper in your market and you invest that difference consistently, renting can outperform buying significantly. In high-cost markets, the price-to-rent ratio often makes renting and investing the mathematically superior choice for over a decade. This does not mean renting forever is always right either. It means the decision should follow the math, not the social pressure. There is also a maintenance reality that catches new homeowners off guard almost universally. The water heater fails in year 2. The roof needs attention in year 5. None of this was in the brochure. The average homeowner spends 1 to 4% of their home's value every year on unplanned repairs and maintenance. On a $450,000 home, that range is between $4,500 and $18,000 a year, on top of every other cost already discussed. Renters do not carry this risk. When something breaks, it is the landlord's problem and the landlord's bill. This is not an argument against owning a home. It is an argument for knowing the true cost before you commit to it. There is also the mobility cost that almost nobody factors in. Selling a home typically costs 8 to 10% of the sale price between agent commissions, closing costs, and repairs needed to sell. On a $450,000 home, that is $36,000 to $45,000 just to exit the asset if your life circumstances change. Renters can move for a new job, a relationship, or simply a better opportunity within 30 days. Homeowners often cannot. None of this is meant to scare you away from buying. It is meant to make sure you buy with clear eyes. Homeownership remains one of the most reliable ways most people build generational wealth, when the numbers are done correctly. The key variable is never whether to buy. It is whether the size of the purchase matches your actual financial capacity, not your approved capacity. Here is a practical test. Calculate your full monthly housing cost, including every hidden item we covered. Then ask if you can still invest 15% of your income comfortably. If the answer is no, the house is too expensive, regardless of what the bank says. If the answer is yes, you have found your real number, not the bank's number. Let's walk through 3 concrete steps you can take this week, regardless of where you are in the process. Step 1. Calculate your real number using the method just described before you tour another property. Step 2. Get pre-approved anyway, but treat that number as information, not as permission. Step 3. Shop only within your real number, even if it means a smaller home or a longer search. Buyers who shop strictly within their calculated real number report significantly higher financial satisfaction 5 years after purchase than those who buy at their full approval limit. This single shift in approach is the difference between a house that serves your life and a house that becomes your life. I want to say one more thing directly, because this is the part most financial content skips. The pressure to buy a home by a certain age is largely a social construct, not a financial requirement. There is no financial law that says owning at 28 is better than owning at 34 if the math and timing are not right at 28. Buying too early, before your income and savings are ready, often costs more than buying a few years later with a stronger financial position. Patience in this specific decision is not falling behind. It is risk management. If you already own a home and the math we covered today describes your situation, the next move is not regret. It is recalibration. Increase your investment percentage on whatever income remains, even if the mortgage itself cannot change immediately. Refinancing when rates allow can sometimes recover a meaningful portion of the monthly gap we discussed earlier. And in some cases, downsizing a few years later is not a failure. It is one of the most underrated wealth-building moves available. There is no shame in adjusting course once you understand the actual math. The shame is in continuing to ignore it. 30 years from now, the people who built real flexibility alongside their home will have choices the house-poor version of themselves never had. That flexibility is not an accident. It is the direct result of one calculation made correctly at the very beginning. The approval email will always feel exciting. That feeling is not the problem. Acting on it without your own math is. So, before you ever open another pre-approval email, do the math first. Let the number confirm your plan, not replace it. A house bought correctly becomes a foundation. A house bought at the edge of approval becomes a ceiling.
The choice between those two outcomes is made far earlier than most people realize, and it is entirely within your control.
I know this video covered a lot of math, but the core idea is simple. Calculate your own number before you ever look at the bank's number. That single habit, applied to the biggest purchase of your life, is worth more than almost any other financial decision you will make. If this video changed how you think about your next home purchase, that subscribe button genuinely helps more people see this before they sign anything. Share it with anyone you know who just got a pre-approval email and is about to make this exact decision. The approval email will arrive again someday for a refinance, a second property, or someone you care about. When it does, you'll already know what to do with it. Calculate your number first. Let the bank's number stay exactly what it is. Information, not instruction. 30 years is a long time to live with a decision made in a few excited minutes after reading an email. Do the math first, then sign with confidence. That is the entire difference. Thanks for watching my video, and see you on next Tuesday by another advice. Wish you a wonderful week ahead. Bye.